Hey, Brendan here. Today I'm looking at a no-code builder that's outside of WordPress called Toddle. They just announced they're going open source, so that's going to be an ongoing process, but I'm really using it to look at visual API building and rendering that data within a canvas. So what I would really recommend is checking out their documentation, and they have the first week in Toddle where you can follow along to these tutorials. There's like a weather app, iTunes search app, and so I've built a bunch of these and tried out some other things too. And I just want to show what I've been working on and maybe get some feedback from my viewers to see like what you're interested in me building, what kind of data is useful. Are you using APIs? Like how do we use APIs? Why are they important? These are all things that we should be thinking about. And WordPress, of course, has built-in APIs and relies on APIs to do a lot of its functionality. But in terms of the actual builder and rendering content on the canvas, there's only a couple of solutions that I'm aware of. Maybe you guys know more. Something like WP Get API, which is a plugin that lets you render and manipulate various APIs within WordPress, but it requires some coding knowledge, and you have to really know PHP to really get the full value out of it. So I would recommend watching these tutorials, and they'll teach you a little bit about APIs and variables, authentication, cookie storage, looping, all these important concepts that are sort of more advanced development things. So I just want to show quickly what I've been doing. So I've built some of these apps. I can go to my projects, and I have all these projects. One of them is this weather app that basically fetches the weather data, and this is one of the ones that's built into Toddle. You can see this is the API URL, and it's a Toddle URL. I mean, they're just using, I think, OpenWeather API, but basically it gets your location and it gets all this data in the side, and then you can decide how you want to use that data. And so I have this, see this little FX, that means I have dynamic data pulled in there, and I've got like the clouds pulled in, and I've got the city name and the state as well, right? So I've got all this data that I can use, and it basically shows it dynamically depending on whoever's viewing it, right? So if you view this app from wherever you're located, it'll say your closest city location. I think it's based on IP or something. So that's a really cool way to just like ingest a bunch of weather data and show only the relevant things you want to see. So moving on, I've got also like a um, Dragon Ball Z API here, right? So if you're familiar with this TV show, I've got there's a Dragon Ball API that's free, right? So you can like go to these websites and like check out, oh, Dragon Ball uh, didn't copyright. So if you just like search for the Dragon Ball API, you can read about all the documentation here and how it works, right? So I've basically just imported the characters here, and I've given it's going to return all those the various data fields, right? So there's the name, there's another name, and there's a bunch of other data, right? So in here we've got the the image source. We go to the source URL, and we're pulling in that item, right? And actually right here at the top level, we're doing a repeat, right? And it's doing like a repeat of all the different items in that array. And then it's getting all those items from the array. So it's, just basically visual building. If you're familiar with bricks and querying and looping data, it's going to be familiar with to you, but it's also just like looping it from external sources. And so you can also just like you can go build a free API from the iTunes search, and this brings in all the search data, and you can search for various things like whatever, I don't know, the cure, see if they've got them. And it's going to take a second to do that query, but it's going to then do all that. So you can search this in real time and returns the query data, and then you can also play these. I won't play it because it'll be super loud. Um, but in any case, so that works like it's using your input, and I can go look at it real quick. So we've got the iTunes Search API. We've got the terms and like a value that's returned, and the value is based on our custom variable that we create. Basically, we create a variable called search, and then we tie that to the input field, right? You say bind the variable to that input. So then whatever the person's searching updates the query that it does to the iTunes API. So yeah, I mean, I know I'm just like going a mile a minute, just kind of breezing through these, but just to give kind of a high end overview of like what we're doing in terms of bringing in data, how to use it, how to manipulate it, how to display it, how to query it properly, that kind of stuff. So again, like this has got a repeat function on it. Again, it's like turning on the query filter in Bricks or other WordPress builders. You say, well, what do I want to query? Well, I want to query the data from my search API, right? So very similar. It's just about looping and manipulating data externally, right? So moving on, I've got a little Pokemon app here, right? This is using the Pokemon API, very similar to the Dragonball API. There's a lot of these sort of fan community APIs, but this one I can go forward and it shows the Pokemon and it shows the like ID of the number of Pokemon, and you can also go back and forward, and you can click on this to show a different angle from the back, and then the shiny version at the back. You can do this for all of them, right? So you can also hit the random, and it'll show a random Pokemon, right? So there's a lot more than I remember. I only remember the first 150 something, 51. But yeah, you can do that, and you'll see all the evolutions as it goes forward. Eevee, Vaporeon, etc. Jolteon, Flareon. So it's just in real time querying that data from the external source, from the Pokemon API, right? So it is doing just all that in real time, and that's pretty cool. It's updating the number in the back, the name, all that good stuff. It's also showing the time and the date, and that's all dynamic too, so that whenever you visit it, it's gonna show your time. Okay, so I'm kind of starting with the easier to understand one. So I know I'm going fast, but I'm gonna, yeah, they're getting sort of more complex as I go down. So the other one that I've got here is a sort of dynamic population data, and we've also got, so we got two components here. One is a search field, and it's not actually tied to this one down here, but you can search for any country like India, and it'll find the common name, the official name, the capital, the population, right? So you can search for any country in here. Brazil, let's see, yep, everything, Indonesia. And it'll say, again, it'll say the capital. It's going to update all that in real time. This is the same kind of functionality, same logic that the iTunes search uses, where it's based off a user input, and you create a variable, and we can take a look at that real quick. So again, we've got the typing input, and that is tied to this input here. If I click on that form input, go to attributes, and again, it's bound to that whatever the user types in, and it updates it. So we've got the get country data, and you can see now that I've typed in Indonesia, it's used that as the like dynamic query string. So right, it's the typing input. It's not just a static value of Indonesia. It's based on whatever I type. So if I go back here and I type in Russia and I go back to the testing, it's going to have my typing input as Russia. So it's a dynamic variable that's tied into the input field that's based off of whatever the user adds to it. And so based on that, it then returns all this data, lots and lots of data. We're only using some of it, but there's tons of other stuff in here. In fact, there's even a show more because there's so much stuff. There's a map view, there's currency stuff, there's lots of different things in here. So this is a cool API to use, this REST countries. These are all free to use APIs. I don't even think I have, the only one I have a key for is the next one. And so also, I'll take a look quickly at this section down below. We actually have some components. And so these are like components. If I click into that, it'll show the component. And these are dynamically these basically pass in these attribute values dynamically based on whatever the context that they're in. So if I go back to, again, my search page, it's passing in the values into the chart as well as the numbers of the things that I have on the page. So we've got you just close some of these. yeah, we've got the US population data feeding into that API. This is a different API. This is DataUSA.io, and it's pulling in all the different year population data of the US, right? There's 2019, 2020, 2021. So it's pulling in the population year by year, and we're also passing that value. It doesn't really show up here, but if I look at the front end, we're passing the value of the population to the bar here, so it's like measured there. Okay, so yeah, so that's how that's working. If I go back to, so that data is getting passed into this chart, which is then like a where is it? It's a style attribute, I believe. So if I go back to, where is it? It's the height of this div here. So styling, and then what is, no, it's this height here. This height is a dynamic value. We have a style variable. If I click on this, that value is calculated by the total population, or to the total numbers of values, like basically, and then dividing it by the max value. So the tallest one is always at the top. And so, if I change, let's see, if I go back to data and I change 800,000 to like 400,000, oops, and click out, and then so now these are closer in value. Again, I can change that to more like 290 or something. So it's like 200,000, 230,000, 290,000. Okay, and now they're like sort of closer in value there, but it doesn't matter because all that's all that's getting passed in to the stuff basically based off the data array in the USA chart. Okay, so I know these are definitely getting a little complicated, but just to give you an idea of how we're pulling this data in and styling it and manipulating different types of data, different way, either arrays or queries, looping things, different formulas, all that good stuff. There's a lot of stuff in here, like conditionally showing things, um, like this number is, we have a negative in here, and we've got all these calculations and things to like dynamically show that. So pretty cool stuff. It's a little complex for sure. The last one is by far probably the most complex, just because it requires authorization and passing session cookie keys from a login form. So this is a working login form, and if I go back to look at it again, it's just we've got those variables for email and password, and those are tied to these inputs. Right, there's the email, there's the password, and again they're based off of the what the user types in, right? And then what happens is it's doing this login to Xano, which is a sort of like Supabase. It's a database managing thing. So it's all external. So basically those users are created here in this external database. And so if I go back here, we've got a like a sign up page. So you can sign up to create an account, and then you have a login page to log in. I didn't make like a forget password. Maybe I did. Oh, I guess I didn't. But the idea is that so you need to allow people to sign up, and that passes all their information privately via the key into the Xano database, and then they're able to be a user in the system. And so this is how SaaS applications are built with logins and whole user base, and none of that stuff is stored like in WordPress. All of it's stored in the WordPress database. Your users, their passwords, all your plugins, all your content, all your pages, your theme, everything's in the WordPress database. But for a lot of SaaS applications and many sort of more complex websites, there's authorization from external user databases, and there's content pulled in from another source, and there's the Pokemon data pulled in from the Pokemon API, and it's just APIs are a way to basically connect a bunch of databases up together. So that's what we've done here, is basically look at a bunch of different APIs, variables, ways of looping and querying data, all that good stuff. So Hopefully that helps. Let me know what you want to see, and I'm happy to kind of go through any of these more in depth. Probably just do some of them anyway, just because it's interesting and helpful. So that is a whirlwind of of content. Uh, but yeah, we've taken a look at the Weather API, the Dragon Ball Z, the iTunes, Pokemon app, and country data and user auth. So a couple different to choose from. So let me know what you think.